Hey y'all, welcome to Southern Yankee DIY. I'm Leah and I'm so glad to have you here today. If this is your first time joining us, go ahead and hit that subscribe button below because you don't want to miss out on any of Southern Yankee DIY's projects, room renovations, or budget savvy home decor. Today I wanted to share with y'all how I make my very own large wooden signs. I love wooden signs right now, but I don't love the price. They're so expensive. So I figured out a way to make my very own. It's such an easy, fun, and customizable project. I know you guys are just gonna love it. So let's get started. The wood I used for this project was plywood. I cut it 3 foot by 3 foot. Notice I had 3 supervisors on this project. You can never have too many eyes. The plywood was a little rough, obviously, so I took my sander and sanded around the top and around the edges. Once I got the plywood pretty smooth, I took some spray paint. My favorite brand is Rust-Oleum, the 2 times. It really covers nicely. I chose to do this project in Colonial Red because I really wanted it to be deep and pretty. I sprayed the entire board and it took about 2 coats. The best part about this project is that you don't have to worry about spray painting the edges because those will be covered with our frame. Once my board was completely dry, it was time to start working on the frame. For the frame, I used long 1x2 pieces of pine board. I simply measured around my board and then cut the frame to fit. Basically, what ended up happening is I cut 2 pieces 3 feet long, and then the other 2 pieces will be 3 feet plus whatever it takes to cover the short pieces. So in my case, it was about 5 feet. This will make more sense once you see it be put together. I made all of these cuts on my compound saw. Make sure that you're always wearing safety glasses when you're using any kind of saw. Safety first. For these cuts, I used my new tool from Craig Jig. It's a setup tool, and it helps me to make straight lines, it does angles, it does all kinds of super cool stuff. I absolutely love it. It's a great stocking stuffer. They always say that you should measure twice and cut once. This definitely applies to me, but mainly I measure twice because I can't remember what I just measured. Once I have all of my frame pieces cut, I like to do a dry fit test, just because sometimes wood sits better on certain edges, just the way the wood bends. You can kind of see here what I was talking about having some extra hangover for your long pieces in order to cover your short pieces. See how the edge that's closest to the garage is longer than the side? That's exactly what I was talking about. This is some very scientific and exact and professional measuring I like to do, where I take one piece and just outline the other piece with it and call that good. It may not be the most professional, but these projects usually have to be done during nap time, so sometimes good enough has to be good enough. got all of my wood cut. I've got my 2 short pieces and my 2 long pieces ready to go. Now I'll go ahead and stain them with my favorite gel stain from Minwax. I really love this one. It dries really quick and it just has that natural wood look to it. I have been using the stain on everything. I know I have to get away from it, but I just can't part with it yet. So I'll go ahead and paint all 3 sides right now, and then I'll paint the back side once it's already on. This is just really to save time. You could wait till everything's dry and stain absolutely everything first. I just am in a hurry. This is where I got smart and remembered that I should probably wear my firm grip multi-purpose gloves. I hate getting stain in my hands because it always makes them just look dirty. I like to apply my stain with either a rag or a brush. This time I used a brush just because it's a larger pieces that I need to get done, but I do like to use a dry rag also, so it's just really whatever your preference is. Don't forget that you will need to stain the edges of the frame. These will show. Now it's time to nail your frame onto your wood piece. If you have clamps that are long enough, I definitely recommend them. I don't have any, they are on my Christmas list, so I just had to kind of use my hand and level it that way. Just make sure that the bottom is flush with the bottom of your board. That's the easiest way to go about it. My other piece of advice for nailing on your frames to your board is to make sure that you're staying low. You don't want it to pop through the top of the board. That always happens to me at least once, and I always try to stay away from it, but it's useless. It happens to me one time at least, and then I have to mess around to get that nail back through and out. You can see that on my first piece I have my stained side facing in because that'll make it easier to stain the outside. On this next part I didn't have that choice because I didn't notice there was a small defect in the wood. So I will have to stain from the inside of this piece, but that's just life, nothing's ever perfect. For all of my DIY frames, I always nail in my short pieces first because it's easier to then figure out where my long pieces need to go. So always start with your short pieces because there will be no question in where they need to be at on the board. They will fit exactly straight onto it, but your longer pieces will need to overlap, and it's just easier to see where that overlap needs to take place if your short pieces are already there. Anyone else bite their lip aggressively when they're nailing boards in? No? Just me? Okay. Now I'm just going to take some paintable white caulk and caulk in all of the edges. Also, it'd be helpful to fill in all of your nail hole gaps with the caulk as well. Now that I have everything caulked and ready to go, it's time to go ahead and finish staining the outside of my pieces. So this is pretty easy for the 3 pieces because I'll just stain the outside of the frame, but I'm gonna have to get a little bit creative when I start to frame the inside of the one piece. Oh good, I make the same aggressive face when I stain as well, so that's not embarrassing at all. So now to stain the inside of my one frame piece, I decided to use my putty knife and just press it against the edge of the board and then paint or stain actually on top of it. This is the same trick I use for when I'm painting around molding because I'm too lazy to tape. And can I just be honest with y'all and tell you that I looked up what that tool is called because I wanted to call it a spackler. Once I had the inside of that frame piece all stained, I went around and then just stained over where I had caulked. And the caulk actually took the stain really well, so that turned out perfect. So for my little saying, I use words that I printed out with my brand new Cricut machine. I just got it for my birthday, and y'all, I am in love. When you come over, everything is going to be monogrammed, and I'm not even sorry about it. If you don't have a Cricut, add it to your Christmas list, and also you could use a stencil if you wanted to. Stencils are great. I used them for everything until I got this new Cricut machine, so those will work just fine. Basically, I start by eyeballing where I want my wording and phrases to go, and then I measure from the top of my board to the top of the letters to make sure that they're all pretty much in line. The great thing about working with plywood is that you still have some wiggle room once you lay down your wording. This is not the case for all materials. Usually once it's stuck down, you're stuck where it is, but plywood, it takes a little bit to make it stick, so you do have some play. So like I said, I did a lot more scraping because of the plywood material, but I would definitely rather work with plywood and have the wiggle room as far as placing my letters and just have to scrape a little bit harder to get them to stick. I just went ahead and repeated this process for my larger wording also. I started with my big M and then just did the same exact thing, measuring the same exact way as I did for my small lettering. I do have a little Cricut tip that I picked up from my mom. Instead of like the Cricut official transfer paper, I use clear shelf liner because it is cheaper and it's readily available at Target, which I happen to be at all the time anyways. So shelf liner is the perfect transfer paper. So like I said, the same process for measuring, except for this time I just went from the bottom of the board to the bottom of my letters, and just to make sure that they're all in line and relatively straight. Then I just kind of played around with it. Again, you still have all of that play left because of the plywood material. So once it's down, I still could wiggle it around and make sure that it was perfect. Finally, it was time for the last portion of my lettering, the mistletoe portion. This is where I start to get really excited about a project because it's just about buttoning up and making sure that everything is perfect. that's it. All that's left is a little bit of cleanup and of course your happy dance, because you're all done. I hope y'all enjoyed this project as much as I have. I can't wait to answer any of your questions or comments below, and I hope y'all have a very Merry Christmas and get some sweet kisses underneath that mistletoe.